And we're live. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Fish the Moment live stream. And hopefully, I'm coming in loud and clear today. Had some issues last week with my internet, but I hopefully got that all figured out. I got hardwired into my computer now, so hopefully it's coming through clear. If it is, please let me know in the chat. Make sure that it's not lagging or the screen's all messed up like it was last week. So hopefully we're all good, and it's good to be back. So Ryan R is already in the chat saying good evening. What's up, Ryan? And so is Ride Red. Good to see you again. So again, we're back this week, and we actually just hit a really big milestone on the Fish the Moment channel. About 2 hours ago before the stream, I hit the 2,000 subscriber mark on this channel, which is awesome. I really appreciate all the support, guys. All people who are watching these live streams and watching my videos and commenting. I just really appreciate it, and especially if you're sharing my videos out with friends, family, and other fishing fans. I really do appreciate that. And so while people are getting into the stream, I'm just going to kind of run through what we're doing tonight and talk about the lakes, and then hopefully about like the 5-minute mark, we'll jump right into it and start breaking down some lakes using Navionics and Google Earth. So I'm seeing some people in here. Tristan, good to see you, man. Alan, Thomas Ford. He's been waiting a whole week to hear about Lake of the Pines, so hopefully I'll be able to talk about his lake and he'll be able to hear it this time. And then Ricky Harris, good to see you. So looks like we are all good so far. Thanks, Alan. So again, hit that 2,000 subscriber mark, and I'm really pumped up about that. And one thing I'm actually going to do is, I know 2,000 subscribers is an awesome benchmark, but I have a little bit higher hopes for this channel. I'm hoping to try to grow this to 5, 10, 15, 20,000 subscribers over the next year or two. And so to kind of help reach that goal, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to be doing a giveaway at 5,000 subscribers. And that might seem like kind of a big jump from 2,000 up to 5,000, but with y'all support and with, you know, the continued content putting out, hopefully I can get up to that 5,000 subscriber mark pretty quick. And so basically what I'm going to be doing when I hit 5,000 subscribers is I'm going to be giving away either 5 or 10 of these gift bags, and these bags have a lot of Strike King lures in them, like Strike King Rage Craws. There's a Strike King Pure Poison Chatterbait. I have some braided fishing line in here, some tubes. There's all kinds of stuff in here. It's probably about $50 worth of fishing tackle in this bag. And then for the grand prize winner, I'm actually going to be giving away a brand new Smoke Series 3 fishing rod, a 7.2 medium heavy smoke rod. And so I haven't really figured out how I'm going to pick the winners of that yet. That'll be determined. It's probably going to take a little while to get up to that 5,000 subscriber mark. But if you guys want to get a chance to win these 5 bags of like $50 of fishing lures plus that free fishing rod, share this video out with friends, let friends know about it, and just try to share this channel as much as you can, and let's try to get up to that 5,000 subscriber mark. So just seeing a bunch of comments coming in. Clemente, good to see you. David, Jerry, Mario, and Mario, both Marios. And Ryan says this channel should be at 5K already, so appreciate that, Ryan. So Pat Science says, remember my name. I've been here from the beginning. So really appreciate all that stuff, guys. So let's get to the lakes that we're talking about today. So first up, we're going to be talking about Lake of the Pines in Texas. And this is a lake that's just a little bit east of Dallas, and it's been pretty warm there for the past couple weeks, and it's supposed to be warming up to like 60-degree mark, so it should be a fun lake to talk about. Next, we have Santee Cooper Reservoir in South Carolina. This is a legendary lake with tons of big bass. The biggest 4-day total for 5 bass, or for 20 bass, was caught there by Preston Clark back in 2006. So it's a big bass mecca. Next, we have Hagg Lake, which is a small lake in Oregon on the west coast. So that should be pretty interesting to break down. And finally, we have Old Hickory Lake in Tennessee, which is just outside of Nashville. So I'm really looking forward to looking through all these lakes. I've been itching to talk about these lakes all week. Since the stream went down last week, I basically have been just waiting every single day to talk through these bodies of water. I found a bunch of cool stuff on Navionics and Google Earth, and so hopefully I'll be able to share all that stuff with you guys today. So I'm pretty pumped. So basically what I'm going to do right now is go over to Google Earth, and I'm going to start talking through these lakes. And by the way, one thing I'm going to do with these videos or with this live stream is I'm going to walk through Google Earth for about 5 to 10 minutes, talk about the lake on Google Earth. Then I'm going to go back to the comments and talk about, or just go to the comments and see what you guys are posting. And then I'm going to go to Navionics and talk for 5 or 10 minutes and go back to the comments. So that seems like it's worked out pretty well. So that's what I'm going to do for the rest of the night. So let's get to Lake of the Pines here in Texas and start looking at Google Earth. Okay, so Lake of the Pines. This lake is a pretty good sized reservoir again on the east side of Dallas, Texas, and it's mildly stained water. I would say it probably has 2 to 3 foot visibility just looking at Google Earth here. And the water temps when Thomas Ford sent this lake in were in the mid 40s to the low 50s. And so again, thanks to Thomas Ford for suggesting this lake. And so what I want to do is I want to just look through this lake on Google Earth and try to pick out some areas visually on the shore using this satellite footage. And then we'll switch over to Navionics and try to look for the underwater structure here as well. So I'm just going to break this lake up into 2 parts, the bottom end of the lake and the upper end of the lake. The bottom end looks like it's a lot clearer, has some deeper water. The upper end of the lake, as you can see, has a little bit dirtier water. It's a little bit more brown, and so that's going to indicate shallower water and maybe like 1 to 2 foot visibility. So a few spots that stuck out to me right away when I was looking at this lake were the main lake points around this pocket on the lower end. The reason I like this is because, as you can see here, there's a lot of clean water. You can see it's kind of a dark blue color, so that water is going to be pretty clear, maybe 2 to 3 feet of visibility. But when we get down to this pocket here, you can actually see that water color changes from this dark kind of blue color to this more brown, dirtier color water. And that transition between the clean water and the dirty water always seems to hold a lot of fish in the pre-spawn. The pre-spawn is basically the time before the fish move up on the beds, but after they finished their winter patterns. So the pre-spawn normally happens when the water temperature gets up from 40 degrees into the 50 degree range. So I would say pre-spawn water temperatures are between 50 and 60 degrees. And in Texas, this normally happens in late January to early February. And then in Arkansas, it'll happen in February into March. And then up north, some of the lakes are still frozen in January up there. But sometimes this pre-spawn period will happen in April or even the beginning of May on a lot of those northern fisheries. So right now, it's getting to the end of January, so these fish in Texas should be moving up to these pre-spawn locations. The water temps are anywhere from 50 to 60 degrees, and the weather is actually going to be warming up in Texas, so it should be getting into the 65 to 70 degree range in the next couple of weeks. So those big bass are going to be moving up shallow and staging. So whenever I'm looking for staging locations for bass in the pre-spawn, I really focus on main lake points and secondary points. So what's a main lake point and a secondary point? Main lake point is any point that sticks out into the main body of water. So as you can see here, here's the main part of Lake of the Pines. And so right here, this is a main lake point. It comes to a V and sticks out into the middle of the lake. A secondary point, on the other hand, is going to be a point that's actually back in a bay or in a pocket. So right here we have 2 more main lake points that stick out into the middle of this lake. Main lake point here and a main lake point here. They stick out into the main body of water. Then just inside of these 2 points in this bay, we have another point that makes a big V. This is a secondary point. And I really like these secondary points in the pre-spawn because what will happen is these fish will sit on these main lake points in the wintertime, and then as the water warms up, they'll transition from the main lake points back into these creeks and pockets and get on these secondary points. And what they're wanting to do is move back into these pockets, like here and here, to spawn, and they'll get on these banks to spawn up shallow. But before they do that, they want to kind of stage in a little bit deeper water. A lot of times in the pre-spawn, you'll get big cold fronts that kind of warm or cool down the water really quick. And so fish don't like to get up and spawn until they have stable warm weather for like 2 weeks. And so these secondary points are great spots. They have access to deep water close by, but they also are really close to these spawning grounds. So the reason I like all of these secondary points in this pocket especially is if we actually take the lake down to a little bit below normal pool, you can actually see that this point here has a lot of white sand on the point. If you look around it, you have this kind of dirt, mud bottom, and then all of a sudden when you get to this main lake point, or the secondary point here, it has nice white sand on it. And in the pre-spawn, during the spawn, bass love to get on white sand. And what they'll do is they'll actually sit out off these points right here, staging up to move up shallow and spawn off these points into these pockets. And so I'll catch a lot of fish fishing a 3/4 ounce Strike King Red Eye Shad. I'll also catch him on like a flat-sided KVD Strike King 1.5 or like a suspending jerkbait just off of these secondary points. And normally I'll just kind of put the boat in maybe 15 to 20 feet of water and cast all the way up to the shore and then work it back to the boat and try to fish that area that's in about 8 to 15 feet of water. That seems to be the sweet spot in the pre-spawn. Going off of this, if we're looking for areas with this white sandy bottom, here's this main lake point I'm talking about. And again, you can see it has that nice white sandy bottom on it. It has a kind of dirtier, muddier bottom off on both sides of the point, and then it comes up to this nice sharp point with white sand on it. So this looks like another great spot for these fish to pull up in the pre-spawn. And then another great spot is this little point back in here again. This is another kind of secondary point. You can see this is a creek that runs in, and here's a nice little point. And it actually is in the mouth of this big spawning pocket here. And there's that spawning pocket. The fish will spawn in here, and they'll set up on this point right here right before they move up to spawn. And you can see it has a little bit lighter bottom, that whiter sand bottom, and that's what the fish are looking for. So if I was going to fish on the lower end of this lake and I was going to try to figure out some pre-spawn patterns on Lake of the Pines, I would start out in this little creek here and try to figure out where the fish were in this creek. Are they on the main lake out here, on these main lake points, on the secondary points, or all the way back in these pockets? And fish actually move up to spawn really fast and really early in Texas. Sometimes you'll find spawning bass as early as February. And so sometimes it's not a bad idea to try back in these creeks and try back in these pockets up shallow with like Strike King Pure Poison chatterbait, something like that, kind of fish that up shallow. Sometimes that works. It's like a blade bait or like a blade swim jig. So that's where I would look on the lower end of Lake of the Pines if I was going to go fish there, let's say tomorrow or this weekend. So let's get back over to this the comments real quick, and then we'll move up to the top end of Lake of the Pines here. So let's see here. Past Dynasty said that he requested Santee or Old Hickory, so that's awesome. I'm glad to be able to look at that. YouTube Fishing Vids, thanks again as always for checking out the videos and the live streams. He's got a great channel too, guys. Check out YouTube Fishing Vids. John Bolton, thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate it as always. John's a great supporter of the channel, so I really appreciate that. Let's see here. We have Anthony says he's been waiting for the show. Awesome. Glad that I'm able to be back talking to y'all. Dallas, Ryan's saying for the win, Dallas, let's go. So I love fishing around Texas lakes. They're always really fun. Todd says on Google Earth, how do you tell a lake's clearest part? How many feet of how many feet clarity offers? So basically, right here, I just going off of experience from what I've seen. Normally, with water clarity on Google Earth, the darker the water and like the darker kind of blue tint the water, the clearer the water is going to be. And just from experience on these Texas lakes, normally a lake this size, the clear end of the lake is going to have 2 to 5 feet of visibility. So I'm just kind of guessing that. But again, that darker blue is going to indicate clear water. And then if we go up to the top end of this lake, you can obviously tell that the water up here is a lot muddier. You can see it's just brown, and this stuff is probably going to have 6 inches of visibility, be like chocolate milk. And then this stuff in here is probably going to have a 1 to 1.5 feet visibility. It's a little bit darker, and you can see a little bit darker blue in there. And then as you transition, you can see it's still a little bit green in here, maybe 1.5 feet to 2 foot, and then it gets clearer again on this part of the lake. So that's kind of how I tell. I just kind of estimate it. I can't tell for certain exactly what the water clarity is, but normally that's a good rule of thumb if you follow those color guidelines. Let's see here. Chase says he's late. I don't think he missed too much, so hopefully we'll be good there. And then getting a ton of comments. Let me keep going through here. Pat says, glad you take some time from school to do this for us. Yeah, appreciate you guys. understanding them in school. I'm in grad school right now, so it's kind of tough to make videos right now. I actually just got done finishing up a group project for one of my classes from MBA program, and I submitted that right before the stream. So trying best I can to get out content while I can, and hopefully I'll be able to get this channel going again this summer when I have more time. Thomas said traps killed on pines, so got the bait right at least. Timmerman, I'm doing Santee Cooper. Yep, so I'll be doing that. Let's see here. Keep going through here. Byron, hey John, I love the live vids. I got all my rods spooled and ready for the new season in Seattle. The waters are still freezing here. Byron's the one who suggested that fishing line spooling video that I did with my shoe. I thought that was kind of cool. From the edge to the ledge. Satman, good to see you. He says, when you originally opened Google Earth, when was that picture taken? So when I first opened up Google Earth, you can actually see up here, that's from Todd Lee. I can go up here to this little icon, it's a clock, and it has an arrow going to the left, and it says like show historical images, and you can click on that, and you can actually scroll back in time, and the original photo I was looking at was taken on it looks like April of 2017. So that's the most recent photo they have. And I can scroll back, and like this photo here is from November of 2013. And so the great thing about Google Earth is you can scroll back those satellite images and look at the lake when it's down and see what the lake looks like at full pool and then down at the lower pool. And we're going to take advantage of that here in just a second on the upper end of the Lake of the Pines. There's some awesome stuff I found on some old satellite footage. And then John Bolton says, are we reviewing Old Hickory tonight? Yep, that'll be the last lake, John, that we're looking at. And killing as usual, good stuff. Daniel, good to see you. Daniel fished on the Arkansas fishing team with me. So let's see here. So let's get back to this lake, getting through the questions. I want to make sure I get a good blend of questions and talking about fishing. So hopefully this is working for y'all. So when you open the scroll bar, doesn't the scroll bar, is that today? So yeah, when you open it, that just means that it's the most recent footage, Todd, that they have locked in here. So when before the scroll bar pops up, it's just whatever the most recent image they have of the lake. So for this lake, it's 2017 in March, but some lakes it could be yesterday, it could be 2 weeks ago. It just kind of depends on when they last saved the image. But either way, so here's Lake of the Pines, here's the upper end. Let's get back up to actually full pool to show you guys this. So this is pretty cool. So this is full pool at Lake of the Pines. You can see that there's a bunch of islands and some shallower water up on the upper end of this lake. There's a bridge and there's some shallow water islands. And a lot of times on the upper end of these lakes, you want to look for ditches and drains. And ditches and drains are basically small creek channels that run across big flats. And so a lot of times you can look at Google Earth and you can kind of find these drains. Like here's a little creek channel right here. If you look at this, there's a nice little creek channel that runs in and it drains out into this flat. And you can kind of see it a little bit using Google Earth here, but problem is it's kind of hard to see where that drain stops. So what you can actually do on Google Earth, which is really cool, is you can, let's go here and take this off. What you can do is you can actually take the lake down using old satellite footage. So I'm looking here, I think I found from 2011, right here, 2011, you can take this lake down and boom, look at this lake, guys. This lake is drawn down and you can see so much more than you did when lake was at full pool. Here's lake at full pool. You can kind of see a little bit. You can kind of maybe see a couple of these ditches and stuff, but when you look at it there, you could see so much more. This is so cool. Like I want to be on this lake right now fishing. All these little ditches, you can see here's a little ditch. It runs in across this point. Here's another ditch that runs behind this island you would never know about unless you use this satellite footage. And this is a prime spot to throw this 3/4 ounce red eye shad. I would just fish the center of these ditches with that red eye and oh, this looks like heaven. So let's get to a couple spots I would fish that I found with a satellite image that looked super good. I was pumped to talk about this last week, and all the footage is messing up when I got to this. So pumped to talk about this. For a second here, Timmerman, he said, just donated $10. He said, thanks for doing Santee. Now come fish a team tournament with me. If I ever make it down to South Carolina, I'll definitely take you up on that offer. And then Daniel, thanks for $5. Really appreciate it. So let's see here. So anyways, this is the spot here. I'm just so pumped up to talk about this. You can probably tell. First off, I really liked this area of Lake of the Pines. For those who live down there, I'll kind of zoom out and show you where it is relative to the main lake. It's just around this first bend, and if you come up here, what you can see is that there's a nice deep channel that runs into this bank and then runs back into this little bay. And when the fish start moving up into the pre-spawn, for the first maybe 2 or 3 weeks of the pre-spawn, they're going to want to follow these defined creek channels that have deeper water by them. And you can tell it's deeper water because if you look at these creek channels here, you can see that there's a creek channel that runs in here, but you can see that sandy bottom is pretty close to the surface. And so if you come here, you can see that the water's a lot darker and there's no sandy bottom visible. So this means it's a deeper creek channel. And again, thanks for Ride Red for the $5 donation. Really appreciate it again, guys. Really appreciate that as always. So this island here looks great. And if we take the lake back up, what you can see is that this is actually a pretty shallow looking area. If you just looked at this using Google Earth here, you would think that this water here is maybe only a few feet deep. And back in here is inches of water. But if we took the lake back down, you can see that that's not the case. There's actually a really defined creek channel. And the one spot I really liked in this whole area is this little shelf down this on the front of this island here. This is a spot that a lot of people are actually going to ignore when the fish move into the pre-spawn. What they'll normally do is they'll come in and they'll fish this bank when the lake's up. They'll come up to the island and they'll just fish down this bank. Might throw a rattle trap up close to the bank, a spinner bait, maybe flip this grass. But they might not come in and actually fish this little ledge that's sitting just off the island, about 20 to 30 feet off the island. And if you look down here, you can actually see that there's some standing timber, some logs and stuff. You can actually see some hard bottom just off the bank here. This looks like some rock or maybe some sand that's just off this island. And you can also see there's another little group of trees and just a few little laydowns scattered just off this island. And so what I would do if I was fishing in this little pocket is I would actually take a Strike King KVD 1.5 flat, and I would either throw it in this red color if the water's a little bit clear, or I'd throw it in a chartreuse blue back color if the water is a little bit more dirty. But this bait runs about 8 foot deep, 6 to 7, 8 foot deep, and I would fish it out in front of this island and try to crank it down into this hard spot here and along these little standing trees. And what these fish will do is they'll, in the winter, kind of sit out here in the main lake, kind of staging, and then as it warms up, they'll follow this creek channel back into this pocket, and they're going to want to spawn back on this spawning flat right here and back in this pocket way back here where the shallow water is. If we take it back up, you can obviously see this is pretty shallow. There's actually some floating grass out on this flat, so these fish will probably spawn on isolated grass clumps or on stumps on this flat. But before they get there, they're going to follow this creek channel in and stage up in this creek channel. And what they'll do is they'll pop up onto these little ledges just off this island, and this is a place people are going to completely ignore if they come back into this spot. So again, run that with a crankbait, maybe throw a Carolina rig down there as well, and you're going to be in business. Again, thanks to the Fish Miser for a $10 donation. Really appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Again, I'll get back to the comments here in just a second when I finish up talking about Google Earth. I'm just too pumped to stop right now to talk about this lake. But another spot I saw here that I thought was amazing, Thomas, I think you should definitely check out, is this roadbed that runs across the mouth of this big spawning pocket. So if you look here, we're kind of up on the upper end of Lake of the Pines still. Here's a general idea of where it is. Here's this pocket. If you look here, you can see clearly that there's either like a creek channel or a roadbed that runs into the lake. And the reason I say it's a roadbed is because if you actually look right here on the map, here's an actual road that runs off the side of this little island, and then it continues into the water here, and then this little patch of deep water, that's the actual center of the road, and it continues all the way down here and across the entire lake. And the reason I like this part of the roadbed the best is because it's actually sitting in a little bit deeper water. There's some trees down, like some standing timber, sitting right off the edge of this roadbed, and it's the mouth of a great spawning pocket. So this is a big spawning pocket. Fish will come up here to spawn later in the year when it gets into like March and April. So what I would do is I would definitely set up maybe just like out in front of this roadbed and just drag a Carolina rig, maybe throw a half-ounce football jig down there, or maybe throw the same baits like that jerk bait, lipless crankbait, or the flat side crankbait, and just work it off this roadbed out in the front of this spawning pocket, and these fish are going to group up on that spot. And what I found about roadbeds in the springtime, especially pre-spawn, is that fish don't set up on these roadbeds all day long. For whatever reason, they'll sometimes set up on them for just like an hour or two during the day. So what I would do, Thomas, is I would actually come in and I would fish down this roadbed 5 or 6 times throughout the day. Just pull up, make a few casts down across it, and if they're there, they're going to bite and you're going to catch them quick. I have a lot of spots like this on Hickory Lake, on a lot of the smaller lakes around Little Rock here, like Lake Maumelle and places like that. And I catch a ton of fish on these road beds, but for whatever reason, I'll fish them in the morning and won't get bit. I'll fish them in the early afternoon and won't get bit. And I'll fish them at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and they'll be there. But sometimes I'll fish them at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and there'll be no fish there, and they'll only be biting in the first 20 minutes in the morning. So just pay attention to the timing when you fish these spots, because there's definitely going to be fish here. It just is a matter of if you're there when they are. So last thing I'm going to do, there's a ton of stuff down. So I would just go through and just kind of look through all this. But especially when you get to the spawn, these fish are going to have a ton of options in this upper end of the lake to spawn on. All these areas that are out of water here are all spawning flats, and these fish could pull up using any of these ditches that we see on the map. I mean, there's literally hundreds of them in here. And so to narrow it down, what I would actually do is I would take the lake back up to full pool. And so here's the lake back up at full pool. What I would do is I would look for areas with clear water up on the top end of this lake. When fish start moving up to spawn, they really want to spawn in clear water because it seems to just be like more stable. I'm not really sure the science of it, but all I know is that fish like to spawn around clear water. Maybe someone in the comments can help me out there. But basically, John's asking what it looks like on Navionics. I'll check that in a second, John. When I get done with the Google Earth here, I'll pull that up. But basically, you want to look for areas with clear water. And so what I would do is, using that same trick I just talked about earlier, I would look for areas where the water gets a little bit darker or a darker blue. So right here you can see the water is pretty muddy. And then in these pockets, like right here, this has a lot of clear water. It gets darker and bluer. And so that's a pocket of clear water. There's a lot of clear water in the mouth of this, or in this back of this bay. There's also some clear water back in these islands right here. And then there's also a little bit of clear water back up in this pocket as well. So these are the places that fish are going to want to get up and spawn in. And so what I would do is I would kind of take one of these pins, and you can actually take this pin and drop it using Google Earth on these areas of clear water. So I would just take 5 or 6 pins here and just mark all these good looking clear water areas. I'll just mark 3 for now just to prove the point. So here's some clear water areas. So I'm dropping these marks on Google Earth. Then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take that lake back down to low pool. And then you can see here are the areas with clear water in them. And a lot of times these fish, before they move up into these clear water areas, are going to stage right outside of them in January and February. When they're in that pre-spawn mode, they'll stage right next to these clear water areas. And so this spot right here looks great with that clear water, but there's actually no deep water around it. Let's pull the lake back up. You can see here's where that, there's a bunch of grass up there now, but right here you can see there's no deep water close by on this side of the island. But just on the other side of this island, if we take the lake down, you can see there's a nice little depression or a little ditch that runs up against this clear water, and there's a ton of standing timber in here, like way more than there is even up on this flat. There's a lot of standing timber in here, and this looks like a great place to flip like a half-ounce jig, maybe throw that flat-side crankbait or a square bill. And I would definitely check this spot out, Thomas. Again, these fish are going to want to get close to that clear water, but this deep water is close by, and this is where they're going to stage. Another good spot, if we look, here's that clear water again, and here's a nice little ditch that runs in back into this flat, right into this clear water. And what I would do is I would just get in the center of this ditch, and I would throw that red rattle trap, especially, or that red striking red eye shad, and I would throw it in this ditch, and I would throw it basically as close to the center of that ditch as I could, and I would just kind of slow roll it. I like that 3/4 ounce red eye shad because I can kind of keep it down in the center of that ditch a little bit easier. And the fish in the springtime and the pre-spawn seem to like that 3/4 ounce red eye shad better than the 1/2 ounce for some reason. But I would just work my way down this ditch around this island, and it looks like there's maybe some grass down there. If we take the lake back up here, you can actually see that there's some like lily pads and grass later in the year. So there might be some grass that's kind of sitting in this ditch when the lake's back to full pool like this. So just work your way down that ditch, and it's another great spot. So with that said, there's a couple more spots I point out here, but we're getting to 30 minutes, and I don't want to spend too much time on Lake of the Pines. So I'm going to get to comments real quick, then we'll switch over to Navionics just for a few minutes. Okay, so looks like we got a couple comments here. Let me try to scroll through here. Okay, so from the edge to the ledge says, I love the Starcher's blueback flat side crankbait. That thing's a killer. You've seen all my videos on that, I'm sure you guys. John says, I'm excited to do some spinnerbait fishing. I'm pumped to try some spinnerbait fishing this spring. I love that bite. It's so good. And Lake of the Pines looks like an awesome spot for it. Ryan R says, the Roadbed will produce, looks sexy. I agree. Let's see here. Hard bottom. Yep, that's what Red says. And then sometimes they don't show the road beds on Navionics. That's true. Hopefully they will on this, but I don't think they did. When I looked at it on Navionics, they didn't show the road bed. So definitely something that you should always look for on Navionics, but a lot of times you can only find them using Google Earth. And Red says that clear water is needed for the eggs. So good insight there. Appreciate that. So I'm having some... Let's see here. I'm trying to get this set up here to kind of lock in. I'm having a little bit of issues here with my controls. Hopefully I'm getting all these comments. Let me kind of scroll through here. Sorry about that. My interface over here is a little bit messed up, but either way, let me move this down here just a second, guys. Sorry about this. Okay, we're good. Okay, so back to it. Let's get to Navionics now, and let me switch over here real quick. Okay, we're back at it. So here's Navionics on Lake of the Pines. So again, guys, Navionics is a free, I'm using the free Navionics web app for this live stream, and I put the description, or I put a link to... Sorry about that. I put the URL to the Navionics web app right below Fish the Moment. If you look at the screen right here, you can see follow along on the Navionics web app. It's webapp.navionics.com. So if you guys want to follow along while you're watching the stream, you can kind of look at the lakes with me. And this is Lake O with an apostrophe, the Pines. And so Navionics is a great tool for finding offshore structure. It shows contour lines. It's just an awesome tool. And also, for those who are new to the stream, if you want to submit a lake for me to actually review, what you can do is you can email me at fishthemoment1@gmail.com, and you can send me the name of your lake, the state it's in, the county, water clarity, and water temperature, and make sure it has a Navionics map on this Navionics web app, and I'll look at it on the stream. So just send me an email there. So John was asking if that roadbed shows up on Navionics, and if you actually look here, John, it doesn't. There's no roadbed showing in this area, so that's pretty interesting. So that's probably a little bit of a hidden spot Thomas can look at. There's a lot of really good stuff on this web app here. You can see it shows a lot of really nice contour lines and ditches and stuff. So you can definitely follow these ditches using Navionics if you have that on your graph at home. Like here's that ditch we were looking at. You can follow this ditch using your boat, so you don't have to try to just guess where it is. So that's really nice. What I'm going to do though is I'm actually going to go back up to the bottom end of this lake, or go back down to the bottom of this lake, and look at this creek right here. I just want to show you guys why I like this spawning pocket so much. So the reason I like it is, first off, if you look here, there's a lot of deep water out in the mouth of this pocket. There's 20 feet out here, but then all of a sudden it comes up pretty quick to about 8 to 10 feet of water. And off this point, you have about 12 foot of water, close to a little 5-foot point. And this looks like, again, a killer spot to throw a Carolina rig, that striking red-eye shad, a jerk bait, something like that. This point right here looks really good too. As you can see that these contour lines are a little bit darker. You can see that darker shade. That means they're shallower. So you have about 8 foot of water here, and then about 12 to 13 foot. And then this point comes up to about 3 foot. And so a creek channel actually swings in against the face of this point. And these fish are going to want to sit on this point here because they can get into deeper water, this 12 or 13 foot right here. And then when it warms up, they can move up to the 3 foot of water really quick and try to spawn. Here's this other point we're talking about. Again, has some nice deep water on the back side of it here, and then shallower up on top. And then here's those other points I was showing. Again, here's a nice steep drop. You can see those contour lines are really close together. When contour lines are close together, that means you have a sharp drop. It goes from shallow water to deep water really quick, and fish love that in the spawn and the pre-spawn, because what they'll do is actually spawn on these banks here, and if they get a cold front, let's say it gets to be like 30 or 40 degrees in the morning, they'll pull off this bank and get on these sharp drops, and then they'll move back up maybe in the afternoon and get back on their beds, but a lot of times they'll actually pull off the bank in the mornings during these cold fronts, and so you can find them stacked up on these sharper contour line areas. So we spent a lot of time here on Lake of the Pines. Hopefully got some ideas, Thomas. I wanted to show you that Google Earth stuff and focus on that most because that's really where I think the value was tonight. But hopefully you can use some of the other tips as far as Navionics goes from the rest of the stream and apply it to Lake of the Pines. And I also did a video on Grapevine Lake, which is also in Texas, and it looks pretty similar to Lake of the Pines. And that was on a previous stream, so check that out. I talked a lot about Navionics for that lake, and I think a lot of the tips I gave on that lake can apply to this lake as well. So next up, we have a fan favorite of lakes that people wanted to talk about. It is Santee Cooper Reservoir in South Carolina. So let's switch over to Santee Cooper. Okay, I got a couple comments before we switch over to this. Let's see here. Fish Miser says, how do you treat lakes that have water pumped in instead of being creek fed? So when the lakes are kind of like pumped in, let's say it's like a man-made reservoir, or you have water that's naturally pumped in instead of a creek-fed lake. Normally what that means is there's going to be maybe a little bit less current on those lakes, and it's also potentially going to have a constant water level. And there's two things about that. One, when you don't have a lot of current on a fishery, that means the fish aren't really going to, that means the fish are really going to be sensitive to wind. Wind is really big on lakes that are like man-made, that have water pumped into them, because they don't have the natural current of a creek pushing water through the lake, but they actually have a lot of wind that also generates current. So the only current that happens on these lakes that the water pumped into them is actually wind current. And so I would focus on those lakes on windy banks, places where the wind is pushing up against the bank really strong, or where the wind is pushing across the point really strong. Those are going to be really solid areas. And also, because the lake is probably going to be a constant level year round, that means the fish are going to stay shallow year round. There's always going to be fish up in like 1 or 2 foot of water on those lakes that stay a constant lake level year round. So I would try to fish shallow and fish windy banks. See here, from the edge to the ledge, she says, can you expand on what you mean by throwing a trap? Keep close to the bottom, yo-yo, etc. So what I'll do with this striking red-eye shad is I'll throw it down, and I'll normally count it down about 1 or 2 seconds just to make sure it gets down into the water. And then I'm just going to actually raise my rod up into the air and just reel it nice and slow. And anytime I do that with this 3/4 ounce red-eye shad, it's going to get down to the bottom even though my rod tip's high because it weighs a lot, especially if I'm fishing like 3 to 4 feet of water. And so I'll raise my rod up and reel that bait nice and slow. And then whenever I hit the bottom and I kind of get stuck on some grass or like a stick on the bottom, I'm going to pull the rod with my hand. So I'm going to reel and then pull the rod and kind of jerk it up off the bottom. And that's going to cause the bait to shoot up really fast off the bottom and then kind of fall back down. And it has some nice rattles in it, so you can hear that. And so basically that's how I retrieve it. Work it down there kind of slow. When I hit something, give it a nice big jerk, and that'll cause a lot of reaction strikes. So Timmerman wants to get on the Santee, so let's do it. So Santee Cooper, this is a lake that was suggested by Ron Bennett and Joey Timmerman, and it is a bass fishing mecca, basically. This lake is it was ranked number 2 in the country of all bass fishing lakes in 2016, and in 2017 it was ranked 8th in the country as far as bass fishing goes. So one of the best lakes in the country. In 2006, the Bassmaster Elite Series had the Santee Cooper Showdown here, and Preston Clark won that tournament with 115 pounds, 15 ounces for 20 bass. So that is huge. That's a huge average, and just a ton of big bass in it. That was actually the all-time 4-day tournament record at the time, and he caught all those fish sight fishing up in lily pads. And on this lake, there's a lot of lily pads, cypress trees, shallow grass, water willows, tules, and reeds, stuff like that. So basically a shallow water fisherman's paradise. And so right now in South Carolina, the temperatures are anywhere from 60 to 70 degrees, and because of that, the water temperatures are going to be warming up quick, and these fish are going to be moving up into the pre-spawn locations, into their spawning locations the next couple of weeks, maybe the next month. So we're going to focus today on pre-spawn. And today we're actually going to focus on Lake Marion. I think this is Marion, this is Moultrie, I'm pretty sure. We're going to focus on Lake Marion just because I had to pick one, and this is the one that looked the best to me. And I'm just going to focus on 2 areas on this lake, because normally when I go to a new body of water, especially a big body of water like Santee Cooper that has a lot of shallow water cover, I normally like to just pick out 2 areas of the lake and stick with those. Because a lot of times when you get these areas that have a ton of shallow water, you have to fish a lot of cover. You can't like use Navionics or use like your graph to find fish. You just have to put your head down, throw a crankbait, a jig, a spinnerbait, and just fish and cover water to find fish in these shallow water areas. So first up, I want to look at this area. And the reason I like this area is if we actually take this footage back, or this aerial footage to one more. There we go. Take it back to 2015 in March, which is similar to the time we're looking at here. You can actually really see some nice clear water on this part of Santee Cooper. Let me get a drink of water real quick, guys. Okay. So basically, I like this area because it has some nice clean water. If you look at this lake here, this whole area is pretty dirty, and the water is pretty deep in here. It gets to like 15, 20 feet, but you can see that that water is nice and brown, and this probably has like 1 to 2 foot visibility. But then as you get back in some of these little bays and pockets, the water gets really clear. Like back in this pocket here, it's super clear water. And the reason for that, I think, is because there's a lot of grass that gets back in these little bays, and that cleans up the water a lot, and I think that helps a ton. What's up, Christian? Just saw that. Basically, what I want to do is I want to look for areas, again, with clear water when the fish start moving up to spawn. As we mentioned earlier, who was that? Let me see here. Ride Red mentioned, he said that fish need clear water for their eggs to spawn, and so when fish are going to look for areas to spawn, they want that clear water where it's nice dark blue. And so what I'm going to do is when I'm fishing in the pre-spawn, I want to look for areas just outside of these clear water areas. The fish will kind of be sitting out here on the main lake in the wintertime and then start transitioning back into these little pockets to spawn. And they're going to stop off on any deep water just outside these spawning bays and pockets. And so basically with this area, what I would do is I would look for any good hard cover that's near deep water. And just by looking at this area, it looks like there's some nice cypress trees just outside of this little spawning bay. And these trees form a nice point. And it looks like, just by looking at the map here, it looks kind of like there's a creek channel that swings in right around here and then feeds this little creek. Something has to be feeding this bay, a little creek channel or something, and it looks like it swings right across the tip of these cypress trees. And so what I would do is I would probably be fishing these cypress trees in here in the pre-spawn in like January, early February, and I'd be fishing them with a KVD 1.5 square bill crankbait, or with a Strike King Pure Poison, which is like that bladed swim jig, or I'd be throwing a black and blue tube or a black neon tube. in like a 4.5-inch size. And I'd just be fishing all these cypress trees, and then as the water starts to warm up, it gets into the high 50s, low 60s. The fish are going to want to start moving up to spawn. So I would move away from these deeper trees. And by the way, I'd fish these trees when the water temp is like 48 to 53 degrees. And then when it gets up to like 55 to 60, I would start moving further to the mouth of this little spawning pocket. And I would fish maybe the mouth of this pocket with that striking red-eye shad, just kind of fan cast the mouth of this pocket where that clean water and the dirty water mix. I'd also move back into this pocket, throwing like a spinner bait or that pure poison, which is a vibrating jig. And I'd fish just some of this grassy area in here. And as you can see, there's actually 3 boats back in this pocket in March. So obviously in 2015, there were some fish sitting up in this clear water pocket, and they're probably just looking for spawning bass. They're sitting up in here, and looks like there's some hay grass or some like thick grass here that they're probably flipping with like a tube or like a heavy jig. So that looks really good to me. Another spot that I really liked over here was this little pocket. It has, again, that nice clear water, and same things. I would just be looking for any kind of cover that's sitting out in front of this pocket, and I would move back in here when the spawn starts. So same kind of mentality, but I would just kind of focus on doing that. The other thing I would look at is this area over here for Ron and Joey. And the reason I love this area here is there's actually a lot of spawning ground that these fish can get on. Right here, all this area is clear water, and so they're going to be spawning all up in these little bays. If we actually take the zoom in here, you can actually see there's some lily pads that are growing up in this area. And this looks like a lot like the area where Preston Clark actually caught that 115-pound bag. And what I would do is when you're sitting in like January and water temps are 48 to 50 degrees, I would fish all of these cypress trees out in front of these spawning pockets. There's a bunch of cypress trees scattered in here, and I fish them with that square bill crankbait, again with that black neon tube, and just be pitching all these trees. And try to find trees that are in like 3 to 5 feet of water that have a little bit of water depth to them. Then as the water warms up into the 55, 60 degree range, I'd work into these spawning bays, and I would fish these lily pad stems with a spinner bait. That's my number 1 bait when the fish get on lily pad stems. My number 2 bait is a black and blue striking pure poison vibrating jig, and so I'd be throwing that as well. And then I also, funny enough, I've actually caught some fish on Lake Dardanelle when fish get on these lily pads or lily pad stems. I've caught them on Alabama rigs in 2 feet of water, fishing an Alabama rig and lily pad stems on Lake Dardanelle. The area set up, it had like a little ditch that runs in here. You can actually see a ditch that runs in here. Let me see if I can find a better image of it. Maybe I can't. But there's a nice little ditch that runs in here, and I would sit in the center of that ditch, and I would throw the Alabama rig with 5-inch swim baits on it with weightless hooks into the lily pad stems and reel it, and I got some of the most vicious strikes you've ever seen fishing an Alabama rig in 2 feet of water in lily pad stems. People, you never believe it, but like people were crushing them at Lake Dardanelle this one year. A 28-pound bag got caught doing it. It was crazy. So you can actually see a bunch of boats are back in here too in March in this lily pad area. So hopefully I'm not crazy. It looks like there's some fishermen in here. They could be crappie fishing. I doubt it, but they could be. I could be wrong. But looks like this is a really good spawning area. So that's one spot I would definitely check out on Santee. The other spot I would look at, let me zoom out here, is actually on the upper end of this lake. And it's underneath the bridge here, and it's this other spawning area. Before I get to that, though, let me get back to the comments here and see what people are saying. I'm gonna actually, let's see here. So having some like weird things going with my dashboard. I don't want to refresh though because I get my turn off the stream. So is the stream coming through, guys? I want to make sure that's all good. So make sure that all that's working. My screen is frozen here. I don't know what the deal is with that, but let me see if this is working. It looks like it's working on my end. Maybe I paused it. I don't know if I'm good to go. Get back up to the live. Yeah, okay, we're good. We're all good. Cool. Okay, so let's get back to the comments. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to make sure everything's going smooth. So we got some comments here. First up, John's just saying the traps with crankbaits have a tighter wobble than the regular crankbaits. That's why they excel in colder water. Definitely, that's what's happening there. Realistic Fishing, hello. Happy to catch some of the stream. What's up, man? Good to see you. Mario, do you think they'd spawn on the bases of cypress trees like they do on Lake Conway? For sure. They'll definitely spawn on the bases of cypress trees as well, especially the ones that are in shallower water. And that's a really big pattern, I think, on Santee Cooper, is fishing around the bases of cypress trees. But when you have so much flooded vegetation like lily pads and grass and stuff like they do at Santee, I think a lot of the bigger fish are actually going to pull, or the majority of the fish are going to pull up in those shallow bays and get in areas that are real shallow and have that clear water. But there'll definitely be fish that spawn on those shallower cypress trees in 3 to 4 feet of water even. So definitely a good call out there. Realistic Fishing, Old Hickory. I'll be doing Old Hickory. That'll be the last one I'm doing here, so stay tuned for that. Poor Boy's Dreams. What's up, man? Pat, know you're looking forward to Old Hickory. I got some good stuff out there, too. I'm excited to see that. Thanks, Fishmiser, for saying the stream's good. And at what water temps do you feel like the winter patterns end? So kind of depends on where you are in the country. Sometimes, like some of these lakes in the country might not get below 50 degrees all year, and so winter temperatures are when the lake is between 55 and 50 degrees, so 50 to 55 degrees. I would consider that winter temperatures. Here in Arkansas, water temps have dipped down into the low 40s. I even saw 39-degree water at Brewer Lake, which is in Russellville, Arkansas. That's super cold. But here in Arkansas, for me, I would say that the pre-spawn starts when the water temperatures were down in like the low 40s, and they get up to like the 48 to 50 degree range. So whenever the water temperature gets from 48 to 50 degrees, I would consider that pre-spawn water temperatures. Now, on a lake like Santee Cooper, where the water temperatures might not get into the 40s ever, pre-spawn might start when the water temperatures get like 52, 53 degrees, and they warm up from like 50 up to 52, 53 degrees. And then in the north, sometimes those fish will even start getting pre-spawn like when the water is 45 degrees because it's just so cold there. But it kind of depends, but that's kind of my general rule. 48 to 50 degrees for like Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, places like that, and maybe Kentucky. Let's see here. Does it matter if you fish the spawn on the north side or the south side of the lake? What I've found, Anthony, is that I always seem to catch fish better on the north side of the lake. The reason for that is because the north side of the lake is protected from a north wind. Normally what happens on lakes like Santee Cooper here is that if you get a strong north wind that comes in from the north, that's going to blow in a lot of water, like dirty water, into these islands. And a lot of times that north wind is a cold wind. It'll come after a cold front, and so it's going to push a lot of cold water into these spawning areas, muddying up the water and just making it really tough to fish. Where if you're fishing on the north end of the lake, that north wind doesn't affect it as much. It doesn't blow that cold water in. And on places like Lake Okeechobee in Florida, the wind direction is huge, especially if you get like a strong north wind. All there is in the south end of the south side of the lake will just get washed out. Muddy water will blow into the backwaters, and it's completely useless to fish there. Those fish in those Florida bass hate dirty water. The reason I like these spots down here that I like a lot is they're actually pretty protected. This area right here is actually protected by this nice island. So even if you got a nice north or a strong north wind, this island will protect these little pockets, and that's why they're staying clear, and that's why I think they're staying clear. And same thing here. Even if a north wind blew into this pocket here, there's a nice little like funnel or a channel that's going to buffer against that dirty water, and it's going to keep this water clear back in here. So always look out for wind direction. That's a really good call out. But always look for spots that are protected from that wind, and those are going to be the clear water areas and the place that fish like to spawn. Realistic Fishing, great thing you're doing here. Review Old Hickory. Reviewing Old Hickory, clinched it. Thanks, Realistic Fishing, for the $5 donation. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the donation as always, guys. And I'm pumped to look at Old Hickory. Let's see here. BA Fishing, good to see you. Pat, what's up? Good to see you. I read Old Hickory was 42 last week. Thanks for the info there. That'll be very helpful later on. The warm south wind also warms the north banks. Good call, Gabe. Yeah, those south winds will warm the water more than cool it, so that's a good call out. So awesome. So let's get back over to Santee and see what this next backwater has to offer. So the reason I picked this backwater here is kind of along the lines of that question that I got from Anthony Blanding. So basically what this area is on the south side of the lake, and if you get a strong north wind, even if it's protected, muddy water can get into this backwater. And so if I was fishing a tournament on this lake and we got a strong north wind for 2 or 3 days in a row, it could blow out this backwater and it can make it unfishable. So because of that, I want to have a backup area. And my backup area would be this pocket here. This pocket's on the north end of the lake, and it's kind of looks like it'd be a little more protected from that north wind. And so it's a backup area in case that area on the south end of the lake gets blown out with dirty water. And if you look in here, you can see again, this water in here is kind of brown and a little bit muddy. And then if you look in here, there's some nice clean water back up in these little pockets. Here's some really clean water way back up in here. More clean water, really good clean water. This is super clear right here. This is good stuff, like right next to dirty water. And so I would really focus on, let's see if there's anything back here, no. But I would really focus on these 3 little areas where you see this dark blue water. Right here, right here, and right here. And my favorite spot of all 3 is actually this little pocket back in here. As you can see, there's a ton of cypress trees. And there's actually some grass, like some lily pads, mixing with the cypress trees. And this is just the perfect combination for spawning bass. Like they're saying on Lake Conway, fish like to spawn on cypress trees. And if you can find an area that has cypress trees mixed with lily pads, and right here actually is mixed with some other type of grass. There's a cypress tree, lily pads, and another type of grass. 3 combinations of different type of vegetation and cover on top of each other. That's going to be a dynamite spot for finding spawning bass. Bass love to get on mixtures of cover, and right here it's in some clear water, so this just looks awesome. And as you can see, there's just a ton of cover in this backwater area. Lots of lily pads. You could get all the way back up here and fish those lily pads, flip in there, throw a frog, throw a flip a tube. You could swim a jig, like a Strike King, Hack Tech, heavy cover, flip swimming jig, stuff like that. And then you can also fish these cypress trees out, and they have some lily pads around them, so it looks like it might be better to maybe flip these trees or maybe throw a weightless stick bait, like a Cinco style bait or a Strike King Ocho, something like that. And so those are the baits I would throw on these trees, and I would just kind of do the same thing I talked about in those other areas, but just focus on this clear water, and this looks like a really good spot. Okay, so I'm going to go some comments. I'm actually not going to look at Navionics for too long. I'll look at it for a couple minutes again on Santee, but again, you can see that it's kind of a shallow water, target-oriented fishery with lots of cover, and so I think it's better to look at these type of fisheries on Google Earth as opposed to on Navionics. But the next 2 lakes we're going to be looking at are actually way more targeted, or they're a little bit deeper, and so it's a lot more beneficial to look at them on Navionics than on Google Earth. So the first part of the stream has been focused on Google Earth, but the next half is going to be focused on Navionics. So let me go through some comments though real quick. Okay, so giving some shout outs to Realistic Fishing. Good stuff, Mario. Good to see you in here. I think I'll be doing Henry Hagg up next, so good to see that you're here. We don't get much north wind here at all. That's Sid, so that's good to hear. It helps for spawning bass. That's probably why the fishing's just so good on Santee. Let's see here. Hate north or east wind, Gabe says. Yeah, I hate wind in general in the spring when the fish are spawning. In pre-spawn, the wind is great because it gets the water stirred up and fish get really active when it's windy, and you can catch them on a jerkbait really well that time, or when it's windy in the pre-spawn. But once they start spawning, wind just is not fun. Ryan agrees. John says that's frog heaven right there in those pads. I agree. That looks so good. And also, a frog is kind of an overlooked bait during the spawn. I actually caught some fish in a lake called Lake Peckerwood in Arkansas last March. It was like March 25th, and the water temps were like in the high 50s, and I was catching them in lily pads using a frog in 58, 59 degree water in March, and the fish were only like 2 or 3 feet of water, and I would just work that frog super fast over the top of the water, and they were crushing it. And so a lot of people think that topwater baits like a frog don't work very well when the water temp is below like 70 degrees, but I've caught fish on buzz baits in 55 degree water. So don't be afraid to throw a frog in that heavy cover, especially if it's hard to fish with like a swim jig or a a tube or something like that. See here, got some other stuff here. Mario says he's excited about Henry Hagg. That's awesome. Ryan, thanks for the Todd and Ryan, thanks for the kindergarten humor. Appreciate that one. Do you think that the rock dam along the east side will hold fish? Anthony's asking. I probably will, but from what I've seen from all the tournaments and stuff that have been won out here, it seems like all the fish like to get in these like backwater areas and get on these cypress trees and cane, reeds, and grass and stuff. So there probably are fish along the dam, but I would focus on those backwaters with this cover. It just seems like that's where the biggest bags come from. Roasted them. That's good. Just gotta expect a little bit more from my audience. We're not the Guggen squad here. So anyways, let's see here. So let's get back to Navionics. Okay, so let's see here. Let's get to Santee Cooper. So cool. So I was right. So this is Lake Marion. I'm glad that I said that right. And this is Lake Moultrie. And I don't really know what is happening with Lake Moultrie. It could be the best part of the lake. I'm not sure. I've just picked a couple areas and have a ton of time to talk about the lake. Only 30 minutes. So I just picked two small areas. But let's just kind of look at Navionics for just a few minutes here and show you why I think that some of these areas I was showing you look pretty good. So here's this first little spot. I showed you that little pocket that had some clear water in it. As you can see again, there's a nice creek channel that feeds off the main lake here back into this pocket and comes all the way back in this little creek here. And so what the fish will do is they'll probably be sitting off in this channel here during the winter. They'll kind of be sitting, looks like there's a little bit like a roadbed that runs in here all the way across. So they might be setting up on this roadbed. Actually, this roadbed looks like it ran across the area where those cypress trees were. So that could be really good. If there's hard bottom and a road right on those cypress trees, that could be really good. But what they'll do is they'll maybe use this roadbed and they'll sit out here in the winter, follow this roadbed back when the water starts to warm up in the 50-degree range, and they'll stage right around here on the bend of that roadbed, and they'll move back into this creek. So solid looking area. Again, here's this other area. You can see that there's some nice, let me see if I can get some, oh, there we go. Got some contour lines now. That's a trick too, guys. If you go onto Navionics web app, there's these things you can click on this little icon here, which is like the sonar thing. You can either select Navionics or sonar charts. Click sonar charts, and when you do, it's going to give you all of the maps that were user generated, and so it's going to give you a lot better picture and a lot more contour lines. So you can see here, we can see a lot more contour lines in here as opposed to when we were just using the traditional Navionics. So anyways, you can see here's some nice contour lines. We could talk about some of these deeper spots, but with the water temperatures being like they are, it's no point. I would just start moving up shallow. Here's another area that we showed. Here's that those shallow spawning pockets I was talking about that had clear water. Again, right out the mouth, there's some nice deep water. Here's a creek channel that runs in, and then another creek channel kind of runs through here. And then in here, you can actually see there's like 5 or 6 feet of water in those lily pads back in this little spawning pocket, and that's where all those lily pads were. And so this looks like a really good spot to fish in the springtime. So I'm going to get off Navionics now. I think I covered it pretty well using Google Earth, but just to give you guys an idea of what this looks like, I want to show you that. So let's get to the next lake. Okay, so next up we have Henry Hagg Lake. This is in Oregon, so completely opposite side of the country here. And this was suggested by Mario DePiero. And so this is Mario's lake. And this is a pretty small lake, and it is a smallmouth fishery. It actually has broken the state record. Smallmouth has come out of this lake 5 separate times. So this lake has huge smallmouth in it. And this is just a 1 bass per day limit. So it seems like it's kind of like a trophy lake up in Oregon. But it looks like it could be a pretty difficult lake. When we look at Navionics, you can see it's just kind of a big bowl. So it's kind of intimidating to look at since it's so small. There's no like creek channels or anything. So it's a pretty interesting lake. The other thing about this lake, or the fact about Oregon, I checked the weather for Mario, and Unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be about 45 degrees outside, and when I checked last week, it was forecasted to rain every single day for 2 weeks. It's kind of depressing weather. I'm sorry, Mario, that's pretty rough. But either way, hopefully the weather clears up for you. You can get back out on the lake. But let's take a look at Henry Hagg Lake. So if we look at this here, a couple things that stand out. First up is that it's kind of looks like it's a little bit soft. It's like kind of a soft bottom lake. It doesn't look like there's a lot of hard rock or big chunk rock or boulders. And normally when I look for smallmouth on a lake like this in Arkansas, Kentucky, places like that, I normally look for areas with big chunk rock, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of chunk rock on this lake, and so we're going to have to look for different types of cover when we're targeting smallmouth out here. And the only exception to that chunk rock idea is the dam down here. You can actually see that there's a really nice dam with a bunch of chunk rock on it. And I actually looked up some fishing reports out here before the show, and it said that there was a bunch of fish that sat down by this dam. And so apparently this is like the spot to be in the summertime, and this spot looks really similar to a lake I fish called Greer's Ferry Lake in Arkansas that has smallmouth in it, and the dam down by Cove Creek is a really good area to catch fish year-round, catch smallmouth year-round. And what I'll do is I'll fish a deep diving KVD jerkbait. It'll dive about 10 foot deep, and I'll fish it down the side of this dam. I'll also fish like a 3/4 ounce football head jig like this off the end of this dam, just kind of working down the end of the dam and trying to fish down maybe 25 to 30 feet of water and fish where the rocks kind of end. On this lake, the rocks might end in 45 or 50 feet of water. So hopefully you can like graph down there and find the end of this riprap bank and then kind of work your jig down right where the rocks end. And that seems to be where a lot of the smallmouth like to set up, especially in the wintertime. It also looks like there's a few boulders. I don't know if they're looks like they might be boulders right here off the bank here, and they might extend out into the middle of the lake here. And if there's any boulders out there in like 30 or 40 or 50 feet of water, Mario, that's the kind of place that's going to hold the biggest smallmouth in the lake. A lot of times up north, the guys will, like when the Elite Series go up north to fish the Great Lakes, they're normally fishing individual boulders, or like Lake Mille Lacs, which is ranked #1 lake in the country in 2017. They'll fish these giant boulders, and they'll use their side scan and down imaging to find these boulders, and then they'll mark them on their graph. And then if they're in like 30 or 40 feet of water, they'll put their boat right up on top of those rock piles and drop a drop shot down there. And they'll just drop the drop shot on that boulder and just shake their rod down there for 2 or 3 minutes straight. And a lot of times these fish will set up on those boulders and get ready to stage to the spawn, and they'll kind of sit out here in the pre-spawn on those boulders in 30, 40, 50 feet of water, and then they'll pull up onto these shallow banks to spawn. And they'll actually spawn out a little bit deeper on these deep clear lakes. They might spawn in 15 to 20 feet of water even if the water clarity is maybe 5 to 10 foot deep. So I can't tell exactly what the water clarity is here. It looks a little bit dirty actually, so they might spawn a little bit shallower in like 8 to 10 foot, maybe 7, 8 feet, something like that. But don't be surprised if you find some smallmouth spawning off the bank, not right up on the shore. And a lot of times, because of that, I like to throw a tube bait or a gitsit. People call it different things, but like a 3.5 inch tube bait. And I'll throw that tube out up onto the bank and then drag it all the way back to the boat into like 20 feet of water, keep my boat maybe 30 or 40 feet and cast all the way up to the bank and drag it back through like 20 or 30 feet of water. And when you do that, a lot of times you can pick off those bass that are spawning or kind of cruising down those spawning areas in 7 to 8 feet, and it's a really good strategy to catch fish. I saw some people saying that John says Johnny's getting excited again. I am getting excited. I'm pretty excited about this lake. This is actually a cool lake, but sometimes I just lose my words when you talk straight for an hour. Sometimes your words just evade you. So like right now, I don't really know what I'm saying, but I just kind of improv it and hope it all works out. So I'm surprised it actually does most of the time. But anyways, let's get back to Henry Hagg. So right here, here's another really good spot for you, Mario. Whoa, Robert, what's up? So Robert and I just donated $50. Really appreciate that, Robert. It looks like you might be. I don't know if are you a new subscriber, Robert. Leave a comment down there, or I haven't seen your comments before. Maybe you comment a couple times on my videos. I don't recognize the name, but definitely let me know if you're a new subscriber and leave a comment if you have any questions. Again, obviously you enjoy the content, so a lot of the guys in here are posting comments on my YouTube videos, and I try to respond to every single comment on my videos. I'm getting a lot of emails from you guys too, and because I'm getting my MBA, it's pretty tough to check my email and check YouTube comments and check Instagram, all that stuff. So if you're sending me an email and I'm not responding right away, I apologize. It's tough to get through 50, 60 emails in a week, but I'm trying to respond to all YouTube comments at least. So if you have a question about the videos or just want to say hey or whatever, comment on YouTube. I read every single comment and I respond to every single comment. So Robert says he's brand new, so welcome to the channel, welcome to the community, and really glad to have you. And thanks for the donation, and everyone who's here, again, let me reiterate that my goal right now is to get up to 5,000 subscribers. Today, we just passed over the 2,000 subscriber mark, and so my goal is to get up to 5,000 subscribers as soon as possible. And when we get there, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to be giving out 5 or 10 of these goodie bags that are filled with Strike King fishing lures. I have some fishing line in here and some reel grips, and the total package here is worth about $50. So all kinds of good lures. These are handpicked from my personal collection. So I have all of these bags set up, and I'm also going to be giving away a Smoke Series 3 7'2" medium heavy fishing rod, brand new in the package. And so when I get to 5,000 subscribers, I'll be giving that away. And I don't know exactly how I'm going to be setting up the giveaway yet, but I'm going to be doing that once we hit 5,000 subs. So share this video with friends, let people know, and help me grow the channel. I really appreciate it. And kind of my goal long term is if I get this channel to get big enough where I'm getting enough views, enough subscribers, I would love to try to even do this full time. I'm graduating from my MBA here in May, so I'll be done with that, and I'll be starting my job doing supply chain management. But I love doing these fishing videos, and I love making content for you guys and just interacting with you. So if you guys really want me to maybe try to make these videos full time, be posting 3-4 times a week, doing collaborative videos, traveling around the country, making videos on all of your home lakes, definitely share the videos, and any support you can give will help. And my promise to you guys will be that I'm not going to try to make this channel into a vlogging channel about my personal life, doing stupid shenanigans. It's going to be bass fishing, and I'm going to stick to bass fishing, how to find more fish, how to learn how to catch more fish, and just how to be a better fisherman. That's the goal of this channel. That's why I do this. That's why I love it. And so that's what I'm going to stick to. So again, really appreciate your support. And so let's get back to the lake. Okay, so kind of went on a tangent there, but let's see here. So one thing that I really like here on this lake, Mario, is this little point that sticks out here. You can actually see it sticks out from the bank pretty far, and this looks like a great spot for these smallmouth to actually stage in the pre-spawn. When the water temperatures on this lake get into like the low 50s, these smallmouth will probably start setting up on the end of this point, and you can catch them on a half-ounce football jig, and actually on a paddle tail swim bait like the Strike King Rage Tail Shad. That bait's a really good bait because it has a nice wide action. It's like a rib swim bait basically, and I would put that on like a half-ounce swim bait head, cast it out, and let it sink down to 20 or 30 feet of water, and just slowly reel that thing on the bottom super slow. And I'd be using like a 4.8-inch version, like a 4.5-inch version of that Rage Tail Shad, and I would just fish it super slow on the bottom and just reel it down there. And a lot of the times those smallmouths will be suspended off the bottom like 2 or 3 feet, or they'll just be kind of sitting on the bottom off these points, and you can pick off some giant smallmouth doing that. I've done that a lot on Greers Ferry Lake. Another thing I see too that I really like about this lake is let's see here. Right here, there's one second here. Let me coming in here. So anyway, sorry. Right here you can actually see some really nice standing timber that actually fell into the water here, and this might just be shoreline cover that's only here in like 5-6 feet of water, but my guess is that this lake might actually be man-made. And what happens when you get these man-made lakes is that a lot of times there'll be construction that happens off on the side, like maybe when these roads are cleared and stuff, and they'll clear out the trees to make this road. And maybe this like patch here, maybe they clean this out for some purpose and they clear all the trees out of here. And what they'll do is they'll take the trees and they'll just dump them in the lake. And a lot of times they'll just kind of throw them up on the shore pretty close, and then they'll kind of drift off into the lake. And so if you can see like right here, there's a nice like little tree that's sticking in the water. Here's another, you can actually kind of see a tree is sticking right here. And these trees will actually be dumped out here in like 20-30 feet of water. And a lot of times you can find some standing timber that's laying on the bottom off these banks here. And even if it's kind of a featureless bank, there's no like good contour line drops or anything, fish will set up on these lay down logs or big trees that got dumped in the lake. You can catch them again on that football jig, on a drop shot, stuff like that. And so you can kind of see where this might be happening. Like right here, here's those trees that kind of got dumped in the lake here. You can see some more got dumped in here. And then there's nothing really happening down these shorelines. Like there's no trees on the shoreline. So it looks like this bank right here might be like an area where they dump those trees in. There's another area over here too that has that similar thing happening. If we look right here, Mario, you can see that there's, again, some trees that got knocked down. And so there might be some more trees that are sitting out right where this little ditch is. There's a little pocket, and there might be some trees in the mouth of this little pocket. And so that looks really good. So what I'm going to do is switch over to Navionics because we can't really tell any more about what's down there without looking at Navionics. And so let's do that. Okay, here's Henry Hagg Lake. Let's get to comments real quick because we got some got a bunch of comments coming in. Tons of comments. Let's see here. So Robert said, I've been watching your videos for a couple of months. Appreciate all your info and looking forward to supporting what you do. Again, really appreciate it, Robert. Glad you like the content. I'm glad you get so excited, man. You're a good dude. Thanks, John. Just a fishing nerd, basically, at heart. Let's see here. Gabe, thanks, saying my channel is your favorite, so I really appreciate that. He says I want to win something. So what I'm going to do, I don't know how I'm going to pick the things. I think it's probably going to be people who are in this live stream commenting. So if you're commenting a lot in the live stream, I'm going to pick people who are making multiple comments in these streams. And so those are the people I'm probably going to put into like a random number generator or a name generator and then do it. So keeping track of everyone who's consistently putting comments in here. And so even if you're not like donating, don't worry about that. I know not everyone has the means to donate, so it's not going to be like if you donate I'm sending you stuff. It's just going to be people who are commenting on my videos all the time, people who are engaging in these chats. Those are people I want to send these stuff to because you're the people who are helping build my channel and helping get this going. So again, I really appreciate all that. See here, John says these live streams are helping. I think so too. Realistic Fishing says supply chain management. I was a purchasing agent for 6 years. I like fishing much better too. Supply chain's fun. That's what I got my undergrad degree in, and I'm doing that right now. But let's see. I mean, fishing, you can't really beat that. If I can fish every single day and share my passion for fishing, nothing can beat that. So 2001 now, one at a time. That's all it takes. One at a time. We are now 4,999 subs away from that goal of sending out the free rods. So one step closer. Robert says, what can we do to help you get to that goal? What helps the most in reaching your target audience? One thing I found with my target audience is that it's mainly people who are like 25 to 55 years old. I don't get a lot of like the younger demographic, the younger kids, and that's a lot of the other channels, fishing channels, they really get bolstered up by those younger kids. And I think there's a lot of younger kids who enjoy this type of content as well. But obviously this is really nitty gritty, like Navionics, Google Earth, maps, stuff like that. So maybe it's a little bit more like lecture-y than like me going out and screwing around. So part of that is that I think my audience is just a little bit older. So one thing is that there's not as many older people on YouTube from that 25 to 50-year-old range. And so anything you can do to talk to your friends, bass fishing clubs, local federations, stuff like that, to share out these videos. I really am trying to target people in that older age demographic. And so if you can try to get more people to actually come to YouTube and watch these videos. I really appreciate it. And that's going to also help the YouTube fishing community in general. If we can get some people who aren't normally YouTube watchers to watch these videos, I think it'll help YouTube as a whole and make it a more viable platform for like me to make a career on. So that's just my 2 cents though. Thanks, John, for the comment there too, just to share the channel. Pat says it's rough. I don't know what PNW means, but let's see here. We have please do Medina Lake. That's Bucketmouth. Bucketmouth, just send me I think you may have sent me one already, but send me an email at fishthemoment1@gmail.com. Tell me the lake name, the county, water clarity, and water temp. Make sure it has a Navionics map, and send that to my email, and I'll add to the list for sure. Just getting some more stuff. I appreciate your opinion on my channel. If you want, if anyone wants to help me out, Bucketmouth. Yeah, just again, anyone who's in here, help out other guys in the channel like Bucketmouth, fishing YouTube vids, bunch of other guys in here who are doing great content. So, like realistic fishing. So, just support the guys here who are in the chat. It's really great to be able to interact with all y'all. So, support each other. Really appreciate that too. Let's see here. Tons of comments. See here. Pacific Northwest is Mario. Okay, so stuff here in the Pacific Northwest. So I got all this stuff going on in the chat, but let me get back over to Navionics and talk about these lakes so we can figure out PNW using Navionics. Okay, so let's see here. Maybe this isn't the Pacific Northwest. Is this the Pacific Northwest? I don't think so, right? Maybe Northwest. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting everything messed up here. But let's just talk about Navionics. That's what I do know. I can talk about. So, anyways, Mario, here's this spot I was talking about here. That area with that little hump where that point kind of stuck out. Actually, this is where that point stuck out. But you can see right here is actually a nice hump in the middle of the lake on the north end of this lake, and this looks like a dynamite spot for the smallmouth to set up in the wintertime. And what I would do on this spot is I would try to get on the outside edges of this hump and cast a football jig or a drop shot down onto the top of this hump in like 30 foot of water. And just to kind of explain what a hump is anywhere where the contour lines come up from deep water up to shallow water and they form a circle. So like right here, it's 97 feet of water. Here's 50 foot, 46 feet, and that's kind of surrounding this area. And then right up in the center, we actually see that red fish mark. It says 33 feet of water. So this contour line is 31 foot deep. And so we have 31 feet of water here, and then 50 to 60 feet on the outside edge, and it's kind of circling this area. So 60 feet in a circle all the way around it, and then it comes up to a little mound in 31 foot. So that's what a hump is, and humps are great places to find smallmouth in the wintertime. They normally offer hard bottom. Humps, just by their nature, normally have hard bottom up on top, like rocks and gravel. So that hard bottom will hold heat in the wintertime. It'll attract those smallmouth. And also, the fact that this is kind of away from the shore is pretty appealing to these smallmouth because this shallow water is going to warm up and cool down really quickly. And so sometimes that'll mess fish up in the springtime. It'll warm up really quick, then it'll cool down really fast with a cold front. It'll get the fish kind of shocked and in a bad mood. And so smallmouth like to kind of sit out a little bit deeper where the water's a little more stable. Even if there's a cold front that comes through, this offshore hump's water temperature won't change as much as like a shallow bank. Another spot that looks really good is actually just right out in front of this hump, and it's this nice little channel swing. If you look right here, there's some nice contour lines that come in really sharp, and then they spread out here and they spread out here. So it's really deep right in here. And then we have a shallower little point and a shallower little point right here. So deep water and then two little shallow points. And shallow is relative. Obviously, this lake is like 109 feet deep. And so 30 foot of water, I would say, is pretty shallow relative to the water depth. And so this point right here and this point right here look like two great spots for these fish to stage in the pre-spawn. And again, I would throw like a Carolina rig, a football jig, that rage tail ribbed swim bait, and fish those areas. And then when the fish actually start moving up to spawn, I would actually kind of stay away from the sharp part of this bank. There's a really sharp drop here. You can see the contour lines are close together. I wouldn't actually fish the sharp break here when they're starting to spawn. I would actually fish the shallower areas where the contour lines are more spread out. The reason for that is that if you imagine the bank when it's super sharp, it's like a 45-degree angle. And those fish aren't going to want to lay their eggs on a 45-degree angle because it's just going to be hard to like form the bed. The eggs might like roll down the slope, who knows. So they want to be on a little bit flatter bottom so they can construct a bed on nice flat bottom. And so they want to be on areas that have, a flat surface. And even if it's offshore in 15 or 20 feet of water, the fish still want to have a nice flat spot to lay their eggs. And so look for these areas where the contour lines are a little bit more spread out, but still kind of offshore in 15 foot. That's where the fish are going to want to spawn. So another example of that is like, let's see here. These contour lines are a little bit messed up. Let me try to switch to, it's a little bit better. So if you look like right here, here's an area where the contour lines are really sharp right here, so this is a little steep drop, but then right here the contour lines get more spread out, and so these smallmouth are going to spawn right around in here where these contour lines are more spread apart. There's normally going to be flat bottom where those contour lines are not intersecting at all. You can see that there's a nice flat spot right here, so that means there's going to be a flat spot on the bottom. So what the fish will do is they'll kind of maybe stage up on this steep point, and you can catch them on jerk baits, Alabama rigs, stuff like that on these steep points, and then they'll spawn up on these shallower flat banks that kind of taper off slowly out in like 9 to 15 feet of water. Another spot that looks really good for you, Mario, is this little point that sticks out here. This is again a nice point that sticks out from the bank, and it's not really visible when you look at it on Google Earth. You can't really tell there's a point here, but there's actually a nice point that sticks out from the bank right here. And these smallmouth will just kind of set up on top of these points. And this is actually the exact bank we talked about where they were throwing in those lay down trees, those trees that got cut down. And so if there's any trees that got thrown on this point and they're scattered on this point, I would definitely try to fish them with that football jig, with the drop shot, stuff like that. So it's really good. And then another spot that I really liked is kind of up on the top end of this lake. And it's just right here. There's actually a bunch of fish markers out here in the middle. I'm not really sure what that's about. But here's that area we were talking about earlier where there was that little pocket and there was some standing timber that got cut down and is dropped right here. And if you look, there's actually kind of a creek channel that runs from the main lake here and then kind of cuts into this pocket. You can see the contour lines kind of make a V. And so it goes from 50 to 60 feet of water up to like 45, 46, 47 right in here. And then up on top on these points, it's like 30 foot and 30 foot. And so what these fish will do is they'll either get up on these points here, and you can see there's a nice flat spot right there where there's no contour lines. That's probably going to have hard bottom on it, so that's a really good spot to check out. And then also on this little flat spot right here where the contour lines get more spread out, that's going to be another spot where the fish might stage to move up shallow. And then obviously they'll follow this creek channel in and then maybe try to spawn in this pocket or spawn around this pocket. So that's another good little spot. And then the last spot I really liked is actually more up on the top end of this lake. And if we look right here, the lake's pretty small, but the reason I like the top end of this lake is that it's a little bit shallower and the water's a little bit muddier, and it might be a little bit more conducive to having largemouth up on the top end of this lake. And there's obviously giant smallmouth in this lake, but there probably are some big largemouth in here too, and largemouth normally seem to weigh more, and so if you can find a spot that's loaded down with 5 big largemouth, you might be able to win a tournament out here pretty easily. So a couple spots I like on the top end of this lake. One is this little flat bump that comes out of the bank. It's kind of like a little notch that sticks out of the bank, and as you can see right here, there's actually a nice creek channel that runs into this pocket. It runs just like this. You can kind of look at the contour lines and see that. And this creek channel bumps right up against this little bump that sticks out of the bank right there. And so creek channel's right here, 34 foot. Right here is only about 9 or 10 foot. And this looks like an area that's going to have hard bottom. Whenever you see contour lines that are an area that has no contour lines, basically an area that's void of contour lines, that's where you're going to find hard bottom. And because it's so close to deep water, the largemouth and the smallmouth can sit out here in the wintertime and then stage, and then when the water warms up, they'll move up onto the shallow hard spot and start spawning up here. So that looks like an awesome spot. Another spot is this little hump out here in the middle of this pocket. Right here is a nice big spawning pocket where the fish are going to spawn all up in here, and this hump is sitting right out in the mouth of it, and a lot of times fish will stage on these humps, and because this creek channel runs straight up against it, there's deep water right here, right off the end of this hump, And because there's no contour lines in this area right here, there's probably going to be hard bottom. So that's going to hold heat. And this looks like a great spot to find fish in late January, early February, maybe up even into March. And I'd fish it again with Alabama rig, a half-ounce Strike King 2-grade football jig, or maybe a drop shower shaky head. So those are my spots here in Henry Hagg Lake. Hopefully that was helpful, Mario. I'm not a big expert on these western fisheries, but hopefully I can take some of my knowledge from out east and apply it over there and help you find some more fish. So let me get some comments. There's a ton of comments coming in, so really appreciate that. So let me respond to these, and then I'll jump to the last lake, which is Old Hickory, which is what I know a lot of y'all have been looking forward to. So Mike's asking, have I ever tried to do some collaborations to get my channel more recognition? I haven't done that so far. I don't really know any of the YouTubers or anything that are popular that have a big audience, and so I haven't really had the opportunity. And just with being in school and everything, it's just hard enough to get out and fish myself, let alone try to fish with other people. So that's kind of a goal I'm going to try to do in the summer, is maybe try to do some collaborations and grow my audience base that way. So good suggestion though. Let's see here. What color pattern would you throw in the pre-spawn? So in the pre-spawn, a lot of times the fish like to feed on big crawfish and on shad, like gizzard shad. And so the only two colors I throw in the pre-spawn is a red color, like this is the chili craw color in the Strike King Red Eye Shad. Also throw the Sam Rayburn red craw color in this like flat side crankbait. And I like to fish this craw color when I'm fishing around a lot of rock or when I'm fishing in grass. For some reason the red works really well in grass, and that's why they call it Sam Rayburn red. It works so well in like Sam Rayburn and places like that that have a lot of grass in them. The other color I like to throw like in a jig is like a green pumpkin color. Kind of imitates crawfish again. And then as far as jerkbaits go, if the water's pretty clear, I'll throw like this crystal shad color and like the Strike King KVD jerkbait. I also like the Chartreuse shad color. It's like a matte white color. And I'll normally fish that when I'm keying on shad or when I'm fishing an area that I know has a lot of shad in it. Let's see here. John saying red shad. It's a good bait for sure. Good pre-spawn bait. It's probably one of my go-to baits to pre-spawn. Let's see here. David's saying that he loves the red eye shad. Won't be long before I'm throwing it here in Georgia. Just looked at one of David's lakes the other day, and he was saying he was catching some fish along a golf course on a red eye shad. So it's a really good bait. And then let's see here. Oregon's in the Pacific Northwest. Oregon's up here, so that makes, well, it's up here for you guys, so that makes sense. And Pat says that these little featureless lakes are pretty tough fisheries, and I would agree. The fact they don't have a lot of contour line or a lot of creek channels and defined ditches and ledges and stuff make them a lot harder to fish, and so the fish will normally maybe just like relate to bait. If there's a lot of bait fish swimming through the lake, they might suspend and chase bait as opposed to getting on the bottom and relating to structure. We're getting some PB smallmouth action in here. My PB smallmouth was probably, it was when I was in Wisconsin. It was like 4 pounds, somewhere around there. I don't know if you guys asked me or if you care, but I just gave you the answer. It's probably like a 4-pounder. I didn't catch a lot. I caught a ton of smallmouth when I was younger, probably thousands of smallmouth from the Milwaukee River, but nothing huge. My biggest smallmouth came off of, it was probably, I think it was Pool 7 of the Mississippi River, which is a weird place to catch personal best smallmouth, but there's some big smallmouth in the Mississippi River. Let's see here. Buckamouth says, would you Texas rig a craw? Yeah, Texas rigging like a Strike King Rage craw or like another type of craw bait. That's a really good way to catch them in the springtime. That's one Strike King Rage Tail craw is one of my go-to baits when they start to spawn. And even in the pre-spawn, I'll throw that Rage Tail craw on a Carolina rig or just Texas rigged, fishing it through the grass, like swimming it through grass or swimming it through lily pad stems. Ride Red says that red flat side looks sick. This bait is awesome. This Strike King KVD 1.5 flat is it's probably my #1 confidence bait in the wintertime. Other than like a 3/4 ounce football head jig. 3/4 ounce football head jig is my number one confidence bait overall, but this is a close runner-up. This bait is awesome. It's pretty light, so I would throw it on like a medium light action bait casting rod, and throw it on like 10-pound fluorocarbon. It makes casting it a little bit easier, but it's an awesome bait. Let's see here. So I'm getting through all the comments. Awesome. So I want to get to this last lake before we run out of time here. So let's transition over to Old Hickory. Okay. Over at Old Hickory. And so we're back across the country, back over to Tennessee, just outside Nashville, and we're at Old Hickory Lake. Old Hickory is a really great fishery. They held a Bassmaster Elite Series out there, like 2010, I think. I'm not sure exact date. And Kevin Worth won that. Kevin Worth is a cool dude. He was like a Kentucky Derby jockey, and he... Maybe it was Kevin Worth. I may get the name wrong because he's a Kentucky Derby jockey. I could see the face at least, and he's also like a scratch golfer, so he's a pretty cool guy. I know him pretty well. So obviously, I don't know him so well. I forgot his name. I don't know. Maybe I'm contradicting myself here. I think it's Kevin Worth though. Either way, Old Hickory is again Lake in Tennessee, and when Alan Kidd is the one who suggested this lake. When he sent me an email, he said the water temps were in the low 40s, and I just saw in here a second ago that the lake was 42 degrees right now, so that's good to know. And sorry about that. And right now it looks like the temperatures over in Tennessee are like 45 to 55 degrees, so that should be warming up the water when the daily highs are getting in the 50s. So hopefully water temps will be getting back up into like the 45, 50 degree range pretty soon. So we're going to talk kind of late winter pre-spawn patterns here on Old Hickory. And first off, what I wanted to look at was Google Earth, and I wanted to kind of have you guys notice this is a river system lake. It kind of looks like a lake. Is this part of the Tennessee River? It might be part of the Tennessee River, but it looks like it's kind of sets up like a Tennessee River impoundment. It has a dam on both ends, and the water seems to flow all the way through this body of water, and there's like a huge tailwater up here, some shallow river and stuff, so that looks pretty good. But Alan, who suggested this, actually lives on the dam side of the lake on the lower end, so I'm going to focus closer to the lower end, mid-lake, lower end, as opposed to the upper end. And one thing about these lakes that have a lot of water running through them and that have a lot of current is that they seem to get muddier in the backs of the creeks a lot easier than lakes that aren't on a river system. And so if you look at this footage from 2013 on Old Hickory, you can actually see that it looks like there was a rain recently, and all of these creeks in here are really muddy. You can see that water right there is just like chocolate milk rolling into here. And it cleans up as you get about halfway back in these creeks, but that muddy water is also, especially if it's cold, it's going to be cold and muddy, and it's going to be cooling down all of these creeks. And really in the wintertime and in the pre-spawn, you don't want a lot of dirty, muddy, cold water flowing into your creeks and your pockets. So what I first looked at when I looked at this lake was I tried to find areas where there wasn't as much dirty water in the backs of the creeks, and this means that there's less cold water flowing into the creeks when there's rain. And so what I did is I just kind of zoomed around the lake and I looked for areas that didn't have muddy water in the back. And here's one right here. So you can see it's a north-facing pocket, and it's pretty clean all the way to the back, so I like this pocket here. And another one is this creek right here. If you look at this, there's a major creek here on this river bend, and if you look at this one again, it's just chocolate milk all the way out, almost halfway into the creek here, just real muddy water, and that's just going to cool down the water, and it's just going to make the fish not want to bite. So when the water's 42 degrees, you want to be fishing the clearest water you can find and the warmest water you can find. So for me, if I was going to make a guess at which creek that would be, it would be this creek right here. We zoom out so the guys who are on the lake can know it's this creek right here. And the reason I like it is because if you look at the backwater here, or the back of this creek, you can see the water's pretty muddy, but the way this creek is shaped, that muddy water kind of hooks around this tail and then it kind of stops because of the nature of the way this creek is set up. And so this water is pretty clear all the way in the back of this creek, and that's going to keep the water a little bit warmer and again clear, and that's going to be great for these late winter pre-spawn bass. And so again, here's a nice bridge that kind of blocks the muddy water from flowing into this creek, and so this whole area in here looks really good for pre-spawn bass. So between this area here and this little pocket here, I think I found my 2 spots I would fish if I was going to fish Old Hickory in a tournament, let's say this weekend. So let's go to Navionics and check these spots out. Okay, boom. Old Hickory Lake. Let me get some comments real quick. We got some guys still talking. I want to make sure not missing anything. Let's see here. Realistic Fixing says, woo, Old Hickory. Let's see. It's part of the Cumberland River. Starts at the Cumberland River. So again, a river system. But thanks for the correction there. Let's see. Looks like John was suggesting the collaborations as well. Gabe's agreeing, and then Ragred says that's Drake's Creek. I think that's the one I was talking about. Let's see here. A couple guys are signing off. Again, if you guys can't make the end of these streams, I do post a stream onto YouTube. I know it gets pretty late here on weekdays, especially when it gets like 9:30. So I'll be posting this footage on YouTube right after the stream, so you can check all of it out. But it looks like we got everyone signing out. Let's see here. So let's check out these creeks I was talking about. So here's this creek right here, and again, if you can look at these contour lines, you can see that there's a really clear, defined main river channel. And this kind of looks like the main river channel on like Kentucky Lake, Pickwick Lake, for guys who fish out there a lot. And right here is a nice main river channel, and then there's a secondary channel that runs and feeds the back of this creek. And again, this creek was pretty clear, and the reason I like it so much is that there's actually a lot of deep water right at the mouth of this creek. And if you look right here, this is a nice steep bank with some docks on it. It looks like a great spot to throw a jerkbait or throw an Alabama rig. I would fish like a KVD jerkbait down the side of those docks, right where those contour lines are nice and steep. The steeper water is going to be good because when the water's like 42 degrees, it gives the fish the ability to get in that deeper water, which is a little more stable, a little bit warmer. And then when the water warms up and you get a sunny day, they can move quickly up to shallow water and get on these docks and stuff and chase bait. And also, if you look, these docks and the steep bank are right at the mouth of a big spawning pocket. Right in here, these fish can move up to spawn, and so there's actually a nice little transition from the steep bank up to shallower water right here. You can see those contour lines start to spread out, and you can actually see that creek channel runs right up against here and then swings off the bank right here. So right where that creek channel swings off the bank, that's called a channel swing, and these fish are going to want to get right where those contour lines go from really steep to a little bit more spread out. And so these docks right here are going to be dynamite right on the main lake. Another spot that looks really good is there's a nice little pocket right here, and that creek channel runs right across the mouth of that pocket. You can see the little dotted lines and the little blue line. There's a creek channel, and these points right here are going to be really good for throwing an Alabama rig and throwing a jerkbait. They're only in like 10 or 12 feet of water, which is perfect for the water clarity on Old Hickory. It looks like it's probably 2 to 3 foot in this pocket, so that's perfect. Another great looking spot is this little shallow point right here. Again, you can see that there's a space and there's no contour lines. And just like we were talking about on Henry Hagg, wherever there's no contour lines, that means that it's going to be a high spot and there's going to be hard bottom there. So this could be a really great place to throw this KVD 1.5 flat, throw a half-ounce football jig, or maybe throw that jerkbait over the top of it. And then as we move back in here, you can see there's just some really good spawning areas, another little steep channel swing bank here. The channel swings up against it and then swings out. So these 2 points could be really good. Again, same bait. So I like those areas a lot. There's also a spot that says community hole right here. And if that's true, it could be a spot to check out. There might be a lot of people there, but community holes are community holes for a reason. They hold fish. I've never actually seen that before, community hole marked. So apparently it's a really well-known spot. Here's another spot too I wanted to look at. Looks really good, is this little high spot right here. This spot right here might not be a great spot in like the winter time, but it could be a really good spot in the pre-spawn and especially in the post-spawn. What you have here is you have the main river channel. The creek channel runs in through here, and then it actually splits off. If you look right here, it's creek channel splits here. You can see these little dotted lines. It splits here and it splits here. So that creek channel goes one way and then the other. And right at the corner is this high spot. And what's going to happen on these high spots is that they're going to attract a lot of current. Current's going to blow on top of them, and it's actually going to cause shell beds to accumulate up on top of these little humps. And this looks like a great place to catch fish in the post-spawn and the pre-spawn on a 3/4 ounce rattle trap or a 3/4 ounce striking red eye shad on a 1/2 ounce football jig, and that's for the pre-spawn, or maybe a jerkbait even, or an Alabama rig. And then in the post spawn, I throw a 10-inch worm or like a Strike King 5XD, stuff like that. So that looks like a great spot. Looks like a spot that they'd be on like the Tennessee River, Kentucky Lake, Pickwick, kind of like a ledge spot. So I like that a lot. Let's move back over to this other little creek then. So here's that other creek I was talking about. So we got this, again, this main channel that runs through here, and then that other channel that kind of snakes into the back of this creek. And this little pocket is actually pretty featureless, it looks like. Let me get the sonar charts, but it's a little bit featureless. There's not like a lot of big creek channels or anything in here, but that actually makes it better in my opinion, because if I'm going on to fish this lake without ever being on the lake, it kind of narrows down where I'm going to fish. And so let's just kind of start from the mouth of the pocket and work in, and I'll just kind of point out all the best spots that I see. And I probably won't be able to go through them like super detailed because we're running out of time, but let's see here. So first up, right here, I mean, that creek channel swings in, boom, right across this bank here. There's some nice docks, and there's a nice big flat. And so these fish are probably going to start, first off, if they're moving from like their wintertime spots out here on the main river channel, they're going to move down this creek, and the first spot they're going to stop at is right here where that channel swings up against this bank, against these docks. So I'd fish this spot right here with the Alabama rig, a jerkbait, stuff like that. Try to fish that little channel swing. I'd also kind of fish where the channel swings back off the bank right here. So the channel swings into the bank here, and that swings off the bank here. So I'd fish right here where the channel kind of swings off the bank, again with the jerkbait and the Alabama rig. Another spot looks really good, looks really, really good, is this spot right here. As you can see, that creek channel comes in really tight against this flat area right here. It's kind of a little bit of a main lake flat, and it's like 3 or 4 feet of water right next to 25 feet. And right here, this spot, that's called a ledge. If you guys want to know what a ledge is, that's what a ledge is. Like a Tennessee River ledge or anything you hear about ledge fishing, this is what they look like. So that creek channel runs in right up against a flat right here, and the contour lines are really close together. And I would think right on that break, right where it goes from 10 to 24 feet of water, there's probably going to be brush, shell beds, rock piles, something down there. And I would fish that with a Carolina rig all day in the pre-spawn. And especially, they'll sit here too in like January when the water is even 40 degrees. You can catch them on Alabama rigs suspended over the top of these. So great looking spot. Another spot I really like, kind of along the same lines, is here this creek channel kind of swings in against this shallow little flat area. There's actually a nice point here. And that creek channel swings in right up against this point, and this is a point that leads into a spawning pocket. And you can see the contour lines are really sharp off this point. And this looks like a great spot to catch fish on this KVD 1.5 flat. I would just crank this point. It probably has a little bit of rock down there, maybe a little bit of harder bottom, and that looks like a stellar spot. Moving back in here, you can actually see that there's some areas that are marked with flooded timber. And I'm actually making a video right now for you guys from Lake Washita where I fished flooded timber in the wintertime, and it's one of my favorite types of cover to fish. It's taken me a while to edit the video with being in school and all, but the reason flooded timber is so good is because fish can actually suspend in those trees when the water gets really cold or during a cold front, and then they can move down to the bottom when the water warms up and move up shallower. So if this flooded timber is kind of spread out across this little point here, the fish will sit off a little bit deeper out in the 12 or 13 feet of water in that flooded timber, and then when a warm weather or like a sunny day comes up, they'll move up onto this point up in the shallow water, and you can catch them on like squirrel crankbaits, spinner baits, and jigs up in like 3 to 4 feet of water in the flooded timber. And then if a cold front comes in, they might start suspending off of the trees in here, and you can actually catch them really well on like a 1/2 ounce or a 3/4 ounce black and blue jig. And what you can do is you pitch that jig into the flooded timber and against the trees, and what will happen is that jig will get caught over the limbs of the trees, and it will kind of fall over the top of the tree, and that line will drag it down. And any fish that are suspended in that tree are going to see this jig falling fast right down their face, and they're going to grab it. And so that's a great way to catch fish on any lake in the country if you have flooded timber. Just find areas that have deep water close by, and you're going to find some fish. Another spot right here actually it's double marked with community holes, so that means that it's definitely a stellar spot. Right here, this island actually looked really good, so I can see why it's a community hole. But this island here has some nice flat water. These fish are probably going to spawn right where there's no contour lines. They'll spawn in this area, and then before they spawn, they'll kind of stage out here in this 20 feet of water, and they'll sit out here in the wintertime in 20 foot. And then as the water temperature warms up to 45, 50 degrees, they'll move up onto these little points. You can see there's one point here, another point right here. And they're pretty subtle, but there's a subtle point here and a subtle point here. And they're in about 11, 12 feet of water. And these look like great spots to fish with a flat side crankbait, jerkbait, jig. You know the story by now. And then as it warms up, they'll actually push up right up against this island when it gets to be 45, or when it gets to be 50, 55, 60 degree water temperatures. And you can catch them on spinner baits, flipping jigs, stuff like that. And then above 60 degrees, they'll move in behind this island because it has protection from the wind, and they'll spawn back here. So that's a pretty dynamic area, and so I can see why it's double marked community hole. Let's see here. Another great spot, again, another little channel swing spot. Contour lines are really sharp together right here, and then they spread out, so it goes from shallow water to really deep water, really steep banks. That looks like a great spot for a jerkbait right there. And then once you get to about this part of the creek, right around here, the water starts to get a little bit muddier. And so until the water temperatures start to warm up, I wouldn't actually go back into these parts of the creek. I would stay out in this main area in here. Here are a couple another good points. Here's a pretty steep point. Looks good. These docks look really good. There's a nice channel swing against these docks. So a lot of good stuff in this creek that you can fish. More channel swings against this bank and against this point. This bank has some good channel swings on it too. So great looking stuff. But once that water temperature starts warming up, guys, on Old Hickory, and it gets to be 50, 55 degrees, those fish actually won't mind getting in that little bit dirtier water. And they sometimes actually like it when it gets to be warming. Fish like to get into warm, muddy water. They don't like to get into cold, muddy water. And so right where that water clarity starts to mix, really clear to really dirty, right in about this area where that water's kind of not super clear, not 5 or 6 or 2 to 3 feet visibility, but not chocolate milk like 6 inches. Whenever you have like a 1 to 2 foot visibility, like that medium water clarity, those fish will really like to get there when the water temperature gets to be like 55 degrees. So when the water temperatures start to warm up in the pre-spawn, find the areas where the clear water and the dirty water mix, and those are really good spots. And then once it gets to be the spawn, those fish don't want to push back all the way into these dirty water pockets because, again, they need clean water to spawn. But you can definitely still catch them in that area where the dirty water and the clean water mix. So love you guys to comments. I just got a donation here. Great live stream from Alan. Hi, appreciate it, Alan. Thanks for the donation. Appreciate the support as always. Always really active in here. Let me get back to the comments here. There's a ton of comments I'm missing, so don't want to get too far behind here. Let's see here. Let's see here. So John's saying that live is always better. I love doing these live streams. I think it's pretty fun. I don't know what that was a reference to, but I think that live streams are pretty fun. It's fun interacting with you guys. So people are dropping, but Bucket Mouth Bass, good to see you in here again. Almost spawn time, says Urban Bass Slayer in Sacramento. Definitely in California, it's getting to be close to spawn time, so I'm pumped for that. Let's see here. John just commented again. Good to see you guys. Always supporting the channel. David Altman, and John are always in here. Gabe, same with you, Ryan, always in here. Gabe's got a question. What what would you Carolina rig post pre-spawn on Washita? On Washita, my favorite bait to Carolina rig is a lizard. So I throw like the Strike King Ragetail lizard. I also throw the Strike King 3X lizard. It's the one that floats. And when I'm fishing areas that don't have any grass, I like the Ragetail lizard. It's just a normal plastic lizard, and it just sits on the bottom. And I throw that off of the end of points in 10 to 15 feet of water, and that's a really good technique, especially around like the Crystal Springs area and down by Mountain Harbor. Just get on some of these secondary points and throw a Carolina rig, and that's really good. I actually have a video from Washita that I'm going to be posting where I went up into Rabbit Creek and was catching them really well on a football jig off some points like that. I caught like my limit in 15 minutes. It was crazy. So, but then I like that floating lizard, the 3X lizard. It's made out of like a stretchy material. I like that when I'm fishing around grass, because what I'll do is I'll put like a 3 to 4 foot leader on my Carolina rig, and I can actually float the lizard over the top of the grass. And so if the grass is here, the lizard will float over the top of it, and I seem to get a lot of bites doing that. Let's see here. Gabe or Josh Bolton says that I'd say he's a brush hog. Brush hog is also that's my second go-to bait, pretty much year round. I like the Strike King game hog, that's what they call it. It's really soft plastic. I like it a lot. They seem to hold on to it really well. It's like really soft. They kind of tear up pretty easily, but I like that. I like the softness of them. And I've caught some of my biggest bass in the summertime actually Carolina rigging that thing. But let's see here. Old Hickory is my favorite home lake. John said that's good. Getting some lakes in. You guys are watching. I'm glad that multiple people are fishing on these lakes. I'm not just doing one lake for one person. It seems like whenever I do a lake, there's 5 or 6 people who fish it. So I'm glad that that's happening. And let's see here. Bunch of people dropping off. Ryan's dropping off. See here, David's saying, love to Carolina Green Pumpkin Super Flukes, 18-inch leader with 8-pound cigar fluorocarbon using a 20-pound braid as a primary line. That's good stuff right there. Good advice from David. That's a really good setup. Normally when I'm throwing a Carolina rig, what I'll do is I'll throw 20-pound fluorocarbon as my main line, and I'll throw 15-pound fluorocarbon or 12-pound fluorocarbon as my leader. And in the spring, I actually like to throw a really long leader on my Carolina rigs. Sometimes I'll even throw a 5-foot leader, and that's a super long leader. And when you're doing that, you need a long rod. I'll throw like a 7'6" bait casting rod when I'm doing that. But sometimes those fish get really spooked, especially when you're fishing tournaments and there's a lot of tournament pressure in an area. And a lot of people will be throwing Carolina rigs with 18 to 24-inch leaders, and you just won't get bit. But if you put that 5-foot leader on there, what it's going to do, one, is it's going to cause you to move the bait slower, because every time you drag that weight, the leader's longer, and so it's going to take longer for the bait to actually move, so you move the bait slower. But also, it also kind of causes the bait to move a little more naturally, because when you pull it, I don't know, it just seems to fall through the water. There's probably science behind it. I don't know if I can get into that without sounding like a fool after talking for 2 hours. Anyways, Redcon One Gear said, how do you fish Carolina rig? What I'll do is I'll cast that bait out, make a super long cast, and try to make the bait land in 5 to 6 feet of water on like any secondary point. I'll keep my boat in like 20 to 25, and then I'll just slowly drag my rods to the side. So I'll do a side sweep, and I'll drag it really slow, and I'll let the bait sit for 2 to 3 seconds, maybe 4 or 5 seconds, depending on how the fish are acting. And I'll drag it another maybe 5, 6, 7 feet and let it sit. And basically, the reason the Carolina rig's so good in the spawn and the pre-spawn is that a lot of times fish will actually spawn out in like 4 or 5, 6 feet of water, and we will never see them. We only see the fish that spawn up on the bank. And so a lot of times you can catch these spawning bass that are off the bank on the Carolina rig, and if you can make that long cast and drag it all the way back to the boat slow, a lot of times you can kind of pull that bait into a fish's bed and catch some good fish. So that's why I think it's good. But I drag it super slow. Awesome info, says Pat. Past Dynasty, good to see you on the stream again, man. Thanks for all the support as always. He says, now I got to find some time from classes to fish. Definitely, I feel you on that one. Anthony said, I went fishing today only because I knew you're going to be laying down the law, and I got skunked again. Fishing's really tough right now. I actually got skunked the last time I went fishing. That's the first time that I've been skunked in like years. I was on Brewer Lake, which is one of my home lakes, but the water temp was 39 degrees. It was so cold. I think the fish were just like lockjaw. Like there's no way they were gonna bite in 39-degree water temperature. But either way, anyways, so we got some stuff. Got a bunch of people. Saying you get hung up in the rocks is Redcon. So one thing I do with that Carolina rig, it's not too bad for getting hung up in the rocks. Like John says, you can Texas rig the plastic lure that you're throwing on it, but you can also, if you throw a 3/4 ounce sliding weight, that also helps avoid hangups. It doesn't seem to bother the fish if you throw an 1/8 ounce weight or a 1 ounce weight on the Carolina rig. So I always go with a 3/4 ounce lead weight. And if you're using a 3/4 ounce lead weight, even if it's like a bullet weight or like a rounded off weight, it doesn't seem to matter, and you can pull it through the rocks pretty easily. Kanan, good to see you, man. What's up? I don't know if you're joining the stream. I'm actually signing off now, but good to see you guys. And good to see everyone on the stream. Thanks for tuning in. We still got 25 people here, 2 hours in. That's awesome. So again, the stream's posting up live on the YouTube right after it's done. So hopefully you guys can go back, look through these lakes if they're your home lake, and maybe mark down the spots that I showed. And again, if you enjoyed the stream, share it with friends. Also share the channel with anyone you know who likes fishing and who you think would enjoy this content, and I really appreciate it. And again, thanks as always for all the activity in the chat, all the chatting, and the community here is great, and I appreciate every time. And also, thanks for all the donations from everybody. My chat feed is like messed up. I'm going to try to get through. I got some of the donations, but for some reason my super chat feed is all screwed up. But let me try to scroll through here and get everybody real quick before I sign off. There's a ton of comments here. Okay, let's see here. So we first got thanks to John Bolton, as always. Thanks to the Timmerman, Daniel Sparlin, my buddy, Ride Red, another guy who's on here all the time. The Fish Miser, thanks for the donation. We got Realistic Fishing. Again, check out his channel. Apparently he's got some great content. I'll check it out as well. And thanks for all the commentary in here. Really appreciate it. And then let's see here. Robert, again, thanks for the top donation tonight. $50. It's awesome. And then let's see here. Looks like that was it. So nope, we got Alan Highs. Don't want to forget that. Alan with the $25. Thank you so much, Alan. Really appreciate that. So again, thanks for everyone for join the stream, and I'll be back again next week on Thursday with 4 new subscriber lakes, and we'll be breaking it down with Navionics, Google Earth, and hopefully showing you guys how to find and catch more fish. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.